It started 2 years ago. I went up in April with a friend and I thought it was a fact-finding time because friends of mine were working in Kununurra and I felt like God said to support the church and that the art would be a way of doing it. So I went up totally not expecting God to do anything and spent 3 weeks being totally blown away by, first of all, what God did, and secondly, what God showed me and how much I thoroughly loved it. And so it's working with a lot of the Indigenous churches, but also working with white churches as well. And I got up there and a lot of the history is telling story by artwork. And so one of the first challenges there was, how do you tell the story? Because I wanted to use their language, but not white people's language in art. So the first church I went to where I drew and shared was a white people's church, and I drew in a Western style. And that was cool, and it was so good doing that. It just felt like, yes, this is great. But then I went to share with an Indigenous church and I realized I can't draw the same way. And they draw story. So my friend was sharing about the story of the sower and the seeds and the different grounds they fall on. I said, God, what do I do? So I was drawing behind her, and what I actually drew was a baobab tree. And after a lot of, there's that desire in you to draw your way, but God, it was like, what's their language, God, that they're going to read? So I drew the simple way and drew a baobab and what I thought were leaves, but they recognised them as baobab nuts, and so the different grounds were in the baobab nuts. And they were just totally blessed by it. And every time I've drawn up there, someone keeps the picture, which is great because then it goes on sharing with people. And then another time I was sharing with a ladies group, and I was sharing about God being the potter and us being the clay. And I handed out these small pieces of clay to these ladies. And I said, that's just to play with while I talk, because there's something about touching the clay while you're talking about it. And talked about how God forms us, and when we're broken, the potter whose clay is broken at the wheel, he puts it down in water and refreshes it. And just shared about how that talks about how God works with us. And then when I'd finished, each of the ladies had made something that God had spoken to them about. And we were able to go through and pray for each of them. In Kununurra, I allowed myself to be free to do what fitted in at the time, to a certain extent more. And it was about what I thought and what I thought the expectations were. And the freedom has been amazing and showed me just the power of sharing the story while drawing the story. I have some things on my heart that I think I might develop there. One of them, you're talking about what would I say to creative people here. One of the things I would love to develop is like a 3-night or a 1 weekend or a 1-day workshop for God's creative people to firstly help them to see what are things they believe that they shouldn't. Like I believed God didn't want art and missions. And to empower them to hear from God, what is He wanting you to do and how do you go about that? I would love to develop one specifically for the Indigenous artists. I've spoken to pastors and they've said the young people come to God and they don't want to do the spirit art, which is good, but they need to find their new creative voice as an Indigenous person to tell their story to their people. And I would love to see that happen. At the moment, God's been speaking so much about fallow fields, about a time of how they set this field aside for a year and then it comes back more nourished. And I feel like God's leading me into a time to just stop, and the nourishment comes from Him, so spend time with Him and then go on from there. And who knows, whatever else.